what to write about. Trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist. Am I worth anything or just a scout? I don't know. I don't know.
That was Great Sounds of Watts with Outside on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, EZ BlueZ is in the building. EZ BlueZ, you're better with introductions more than me. Who do we have with us today on Behind the Brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to put the keys in the DeLorean. We want to throw it up to 88 miles an hour, and we want to go back to the before times, back to walking into a building, seeing someone hanging out on a stairwell, and truly understanding what it was like to try to immerse themselves into a scene and to juggle what it was like holding employment and education and dealing with a city that was brand new to them and finding out exactly who they were, why they were here, and what truly mattered. This person from Jump, to watch them grow and just blossom into the human being that they stand before us today with, has been such an incredible journey, and one that I am blessed to say that I at least had a bit part in, and I like bit parts because they, work out really well when you're looking at the big picture of things. But it's plain and simple. This is someone who has taken the idea of deconstruction in the religious aspect and has really understood and grown from it. This is a person who has led the hearts of the youth to move forward. This is a person that rocks it out on TikTok on an everyday basis and is truly understanding what it is to be a follower of Christ in a world that tells you if you're different, you were wrong. I want you to put your hands together, not if you're driving. If you're driving, please keep your hands at 10 and 2. We don't need any accidents. But put your heart hands together for the amazing, the incredible, the absolute awesome, and just a heck of a person to talk to, Moriah Felder. Welcome, bienvenue.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, see, this is one of the things that I love about this show is we love to tell these different type of stories, but it's also a matter of, we let we're allowed to have family come through the show, and you are someone that I 100%, you are family whether you want to be part of family or not at this point. But what's really, really incredible about your story is, you came out to New Haven through Yale, through the Gibbs School, and I love something that you said to me when I first started talking about deconstruction. Was I went to the Gibbs School. I was pretty much, read into, the philosophy of deconstruction. Now, for those that are, playing the home game, what exactly is deconstruction when we're talking about, Christianity?
So I like to think of deconstruction as kind of taking apart the faith as it's often given to us, right? If you think of faith and religion as a Lego tower, right? It's kind of like it's seeing what is what makes up all of those things, and where do we get those pieces, and how do we put all of those things together, and questioning should those pieces actually belong there. So in the context of faith, it's saying, okay, so you're telling me that, this is the one way to live. So how did we get here? Show your work here, right? Like, show me how you got these answers, and then let me decide for myself, does this actually make any sense? Where did this come from? What are the roots of these beliefs? And deciding if this is something that I want to continue to believe and continue to live my life.
That's awesome. And I always kind of look at it too, for those that like to play the cultural home game. And I know there's a whole bunch of people who are going to get really mad at this analogy. And that's why I think I'm going to love it even more. I kind of look at corporate Christianity as, serving under the empire. And at first, you're supposed to fight these robots, and, you're following the senator to the end of the thing. And then you realize Order 66 happens, and you've been the bad guy the whole time. If you look back through history, there's a real deep hurt when you're dealing with, forced Christianity on different type of culture, different type of tribalism. instead of allowing, say, unconditional love to just coat and to let that go through. How do you think we've gotten so far away from love everybody to love the people that agree with you?
I think it is honestly human nature at its core, right? Because the the message of Jesus, right, to love everybody was essentially like it was so countercultural, so just against what was happening at the time that they killed him, right? So like this is not a message that is easily digestible and like one that is easily put into practice. And I think we even see in Acts, like Peter and Paul, like Peter was like, yeah, I was with Jesus and he said to love everybody, but these Gentile folks, they're real different, right? And they don't follow the customs that we follow. So do we have to include them? Right. And this is only a couple years after Jesus had died, right? So the farther we get from from the life of Christ, right, the more and more we start to struggle with what does that really mean. And then when you pair faith and empire, faith and government and structures, it always is going to seek to control and to exclude, right? So when you I really don't want to nerd out. It is not my goal, but like if you go back to like Constantine, like making Christianity like the dominant religion, right? That's automatically going to say that if you are for us, you are for us, and if you're against us, then like the extension of love everybody doesn't extend to you because you are not for us. And then when you add capitalism in the mix, like you can exploit Christianity to make money off of it and to control politicians and control lawmakers. You're like, oh man, like if I can manipulate this to control people and to get what I want, what does it matter that I'm actually, how what does it matter that I'm actually sticking true to what the initial tenets of my faith says? Because I can manipulate it for my own gain.
Thank you. A lot of people are so super mad right now, and I'm so super happy about that. No, because at the end of the day, it's this all or nothing type of aspect, and it's very easy to motivate people through fear. And it's one of the easiest things out there. It's also very easy to motivate people through dislike. It's one of the reasons why our military basic training villainizes a drill sergeant, and the drill sergeant is able to be as mean as humanly possible because that'll unite. These 60 strangers that I've never met before are going to unite for their hatred on this one person, and that's what's going to get them through basic training. And it's that same type of principle that goes back, and it is so ingrained in the human DNA. And that's why I think, we see a lot of that disconnect from what I call Christ, people who follow Christ, and, corporate Christianity. And although it's always spoken and, it seems really, really spoken in certain areas, that community is so super important, that also becomes community is important as long as you don't have to see things 100% our way. That, look at it like this. We have to look at it as a big tent. And, so it's an 80-20. So that 20% that you're uncomfortable is part of someone else's 80%. But when that 20% is based on lies, and that 20% dehumanizes other people just for being themselves, I've talked about this a lot of times. I will never understand why there is such an issue with the LGBTQ plus community and Christianity, when the first time I truly saw God's unconditional love and how it could change someone for the best was watching Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. You watch somebody there just surrounded by 5 strangers that just love them for a week and tell them they're amazing for a week, and you watch the positive changes on this person. How can the corporate Christian structure say that that's not Christ's love? If that's exactly what we are supposedly called to do, how do you wrestle with that as for someone who, you're a teacher. I'm just a big mouth. You've actually jumped into the aspect of it. I try to stay as far away from it as possible because they don't want me to leave.
Yeah, I think when I initially started, kind of this deconstruction journey, as I like to think about it, even as I was wrestling with being affirming of the LGBTQ community, I was like, so at the end of the day, like, I would rather stand before God and say I included too many people, and like I took love everyone too seriously than not seriously enough. And I saw that I could never kind of hold together being stringent on belief in a way that harmed and hurt real people, right? Like I think at my core, I've always said and I've always taught that the end of the goal of theology, right, should be for people to feel free, for people to feel loved, and to be living their abundant life. And if I'm holding a theology, if I'm practicing a theology that is creating the opposite, then there has to be something wrong with my theology. Because what is it producing? Like, what's the fruit that it's producing, right? To use Christian language, right? So if it's not producing good things and it's making people hate themselves, to feel like God hates them, to feel like their life isn't worth living, then that's a theology that isn't worth holding on to. And I think logically, right, before I even got to, proper interpretation of scripture and translation and errors around that, I was just like, all right, like, I have to kind of love and accept everyone purely for the fact that, like, I know people who are queer and I cannot think of one queer Christian that has not at some point considered like that life was not worth continuing to live. There's something wrong there, right? So there has to be an issue with the theology and not the people, right? So that was how I always had to square that in my mind.
No, and that's an incredible point too, because you really do have to look at where that flaw lands. And I believe it was Camus, and I could be wrong. I say this quote all the time, but I always mess up who originally said it. But the biggest joke in the world is God made humans in their image, and then humans went around and returned the favor. And that's really what we start to see. And we see it as far, like, this is not new, guys. Like, everyone who's like, oh yeah, we totally see this with the MAGA people and blah blah blah. There were crusades. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was the Inquisition, where literally they would lock people in an Iron Maiden until they converted to Christianity. This is not new. We're being played the same soundtrack over and over again. It's just this time it's sampled a little bit different. This time it's got a little bit more flair on it, But now, as you are growing and continuing to move, you are now taking more of that forefront look. You are saying, okay, this is what what is tolerable. This is what isn't tolerable as for behavior. Boundaries are important, and how do we, as the people, like, say, just getting into being followers of Christ, how do we go through and be able to maintain love everybody, even that person that is spewing venom, spewing some of that hatred, spewing a lot of that hurt? I like to talk about it as the original point of hurt, as per everyone who, most of the guys that have issues with people with the trans community got the living daylights beat out of them by a male figure when they ran around in their mom's heels. And that's really the person we have to sit and talk to, that hurt child. But how do you go about this unconditional love, but not tolerating the toxic behavior? And how can we do that in a Christ-like way?
I think love looks different for everybody, and what loving people looks like is different. uh, we're supposed to love everybody, but not nowhere does it say that we can't have boundaries with people. And I think it depends on yeah, how much folks are willing to engage, right? So if I understand that there are folks who are stern in their beliefs, who are not trying to have a conversation, who are not trying to understand, I can love you from a distance and still create hard, rigid boundaries and say that I'm not going to let you be close to me, to hurt me, to spew your venom on me, right? I can wish the best for you. I can wish, you know, that you find joy and happiness and liberation in your own way, and not wish harm on you, but still keep you at arm's length.
Right.
Out of as my grandmother from the South used to say, you can't. Sometimes you got to feed people out of a long handled spoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to love you from a distance, right? And that means that you get my best wishes from afar. Because we can't allow, because I don't think that that love is intended to allow everybody access to us, to hurt us and to tear us down. And I think sometimes Christianity is just like, well, you know, if we love everybody, then we have to bring everybody in the same way. No, I don't. And I think that also goes to family members and things like that, where if folks are determined to treat you in a way that is not aligned with love, then you can you can keep your distance.
Have those boundaries.
No,
Exactly.
yeah,
Understand.
Because I don't think God calls us to be fools.
No,
no.
not at all. I agree.
I mean, sometimes they,
Sometimes God wants you to be a fool. Sometimes
God likes when I jump around and act a fool.
Maybe that's your own opinion. I don't think God wants fools in his kingdom, but that's just me.
No, God told me it's fine.
I'm not a pastor or anything. I don't even think God wants you to consider yourself a clown. He wants you to see yourself as a valued person. But that's just my point of view in life. Continue on with this interview. And I don't want to go further into that. I don't want to say nothing I don't know about. But I don't think God wants fools and clowns and weirdos in this. He wants the elite.
Yeah, right. No, but that's the thing. And that's one of the most incredible things, because that is the one thing that I have discovered throughout the entire thing. Mm-hmm. Yes, God does. God wants you at your weirdest. God wants you faults and all. If you have a huge boil on your neck, God's going to give you, something cool, like an extra gold spinner necklace just for that boil, because when it's there, it's there. It says the meek will inherit the earth. It doesn't say the top echelon will inherit the earth.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
I know you're not. I know you're not. But I love that we got there, because that is one of the most important things. Is we become so super conditioned. Mm-hmm. It is through the sociological evolution of how a word is supposed to be. You can, if anyone's ever read Derrida's Grammatology, I'm sure you've thrown it against the wall 17 to 18 times, because he uses language to disprove language. But the basic aspect of it, Derrida, he's a French philosopher.
Gotcha.
Derrida. And the name of the book is called Grammatology.
Okay.
But he uses language to disprove language. So it's a lot of running around. It's really annoying. And you say words I can't say on the radio when you read the book. But the basic, if you boil it all down, the basic thought process is what makes CAT cat? You were taught that it was cat. What made the person who taught you that any smarter than you currently? Nothing. So if your source material is already flawed, how can it be perfect here? And that's something that we really, really need to look into. And that's what I really loved about people who start to take more of that interpersonal relationship with Christ. Because whether you call the Bill, he's cool being called Bill. He's cool with just hanging out, like chilling in your room, doing some whatever you're doing. You don't have to show up on Sunday in your best gear, rocking that huge fan because it's hot as heck in there, and sitting there for 37 hours. You can have that personal relationship where you wake up and be like, "What's up, Jesus? Hey, Ben." Kind of, You know, I
Hey
gotta
man,
go to
on
this.
WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, myself Prestige and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City made EZ BlueZ is in the building. Let's praise him. Moriah, since we're talking about books and everything, are you an author?
So smooth, bro.
Are you like an author? Have you ever
Yeah.
created anything? Like I hear a content creator saying all these multitasks with this resume you just gave us for your bio. Like, have you ever considered doing a book?
Not yet.
Right.
I'm in some talks with some folks about possibly turning a sermon that I preached up in Massachusetts. And some folks there reached out to me about possibly wanting to collaborate and expanding that on a book. So the talks are there. It's it's in the works, but not as of yet.
Okay, explain to me this. You said you're a New Yorker in Virginia. Break it down to me.
Okay, so born in Queens, New York, lived there until I was 9 years old,
Gotcha.
and then happened to move to Virginia, but never connected with Virginia, never became a Virginian. And then first chance I got to come back up to the Northeast, I did. So that's how I ended up in New Haven in 2016.
Now, which Virginia we're talking? We're talking about country Virginia, or we're talking about, this like a little bit, like a little city life in there, like Hampton or like Newport News? Because I was born in Virginia. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, so I'm from Chesapeake, which
wow, okay.
It's pretty country out there. And now my parents live in Suffolk, which is straight country.
Oh, definitely. You can't go more country than Suffolk. Yeah.
That's never been my style. I love that my family loves it. I go visit a couple times a year, but it's not for me.
You gain a couple pounds down there?
Oh, for sure. I mean, so to paint the picture for you though, like my parents' church is across the street from a cotton field. So you just see you just drive and you just see cotton.
Oh, that's crazy.
And I'm like, so there's like there's still cotton that like grows out of the ground somewhere, and it's here.
Oh yeah.
That's a different level of country to me. And I'm not built for it.
Yeah, and I had those flashbacks too. Me and my sister, we went to the Colonial Williamsburg, and we saw just everything in the past. It didn't like hold back on nothing. I think the only thing that didn't hold back was obviously, like, was people they had actors who were slave workers back then, and they stopped, I think, in like the late 70s, early 80s. They just stopped it. And that's recent, mind you. That's so recent. So like I understand those flashbacks. But you did go to Hampton University. That's actually where my parents met. So like where it's crazy. Yeah, it's really crazy. So like I got a lot of ties to Virginia. So I can talk about Virginia all day. But what major did you go into Hampton University? Did that lead, was it communications? Did that lead like going up there? Like, please break it down to us.
Yeah, so I guess the full story is I ended up transferring to Hampton University. So initially I went to a small school in Lynchburg, Virginia, called Lynchburg College. Why I went there, I'm still not sure. I did. And initially I went as a communications major, thinking I was going to end up being a sportscaster, because that was what I did in high school, did radio, did newspaper, all of those things. So went to Lynchburg College for 2 years, and I was like, essentially I did everything I wanted to do in 2 years. I was like, so I'm president of Black Student Association, like I've done all of the things. And also it's Lynchburg, Virginia. It's kind of racist. I'd rather get out of here. So I ended up transferring to Hampton, and I changed my major to sociology because I realized that was really what I wanted to do. As like an 18, 19-year-old, I was like, man, I'm going to save the world from racism. Because I think if I have a thought through case, right? Like if you explain the logic of why it's wrong, like of course, like people will change. I was very optimistic at 19 years old, and I thought I was gonna like save the world. But I really enjoyed my time at Hampton. I love my home by the sea, and it definitely was an education that changed my life. For sure.
You had a lot of crabs, you had a lot of shrimp, you had a lot of scallops.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, there's no way you are in Hampton and don't eat well all the
Oh
time.
yeah, definitely. It's a new experience. Easy. Your finger is up. You're turning red.
Yeah, word. First of all, I'm
That's a signal.
starving.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm starving. That was amazing.
Mhm.
I heard shrimp and crab legs
Oh yeah,
but
crabs is completely different in Virginia. It's like
yeah,
religion.
Mhm.
I've heard. I
Mhm.
did spend a little bit of time at Fort Lee and Fort Houston.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
That's right. I
oh,
forgot.
you meant the stuff you eat. Totally
Yup,
different. I
yes.
apologize.
Oh wow.
Okay,
You went there.
word.
With the
I
guests
did.
we have, you went there. My
I
God.
did.
Alright,
Go
Yes,
ahead.
I did.
Continue.
Because I
look,
can. Because I can.
look,
Because
he knows I'm not phased by it.
exactly. That's why I like it. Look, there might
Uh,
be a reality where Mariah and
mhm.
I would be the ones sitting in the back of a church, spit talking.
I
What's
mean,
going on right now? I'm just saying.
it's kind of what I do. So
Yeah, well, it's just the way things go. But no, at the end of the day, I think it's really interesting too because one, being as pale as I am and growing up, in Long Island, New York, and now out here in CT, I've seen a very small part of the aspect. But like I know me personally, when I spin the thing, I'm like, oh, where do I want to live now? Where do I want to go back now? If it ever landed on a place with Lynchburg, it would terrify me to go there. What was it like for you to kind of embrace that? Because what's merely a weird inconvenience for me is a generational traumatic fear for y'all. And I would love to know a little bit more about that journey.
yeah. So it was definitely interesting, and I think in some ways, because I had grown up in Chesapeake and kind of had become almost numb or desensitized
Mhm.
to the racism, to the microaggressions. Right? Like I was like, well, it can't be anything. It can't be anything worse than middle school, high school, right? My first time riding the bus in Virginia, there were kids talking about lynching me as a fourth grader, right? So they were picking out trees in my yard as the bus dropped me off, making jokes about lynching me, right?
Good
So
Lord.
that was my introduction to
Right.
Virginia. So in some ways, I was like, it kind of can't be worse. And I think they had like a sports management major and a communications, and I was like, well, that feels like a good combo for me because initially
Mhm.
the dream was, to end up on ESPN,
Mhm.
as a sportscaster. So I was like, all right, it has this combo that I'm looking for. It's a small school. I think I could make it work because it can't be that
Mhm.
bad. And I think I adapted a level of vigilance
Mhm.
in Virginia that yeah, that just became kind of second nature to me,
Right.
which I realize now is awful and traumatic. Of always looking over your shoulder, of not trusting people, making friends, and you're like, all right, so why do you want to be my friend? Like, do you think I'm like the cool black kid? Like,
Mm.
um,
Mhm.
right? Like, folks in the dorm asking me, girls in the dorm asking me, oh, can you braid my hair? And they're like, I was like, I can't braid, and they're like, but you're black. What do you mean?
Mm.
Right? Or can you teach me how to do the Dougie? And I'm like, I also can't dance. And folks being like, oh, well, I'm blacker than you. I can braid and dance. And I'm like, okay, right?
Right.
So
Right.
those things just kind of became a norm in a way that I think was really unhealthy. And I
Mhm.
think I kind of knew that was not, yeah, it was not a place for me to thrive because I had always kind of been this pro-black radical person, right? So I spent easy. I think I probably told you this. I spent 6 months in high school signing my name as Mariah X. Uh,
Mhm.
until
Right.
until they
X.
until they threatened to suspend me.
Oh
And I had a
wow.
Mhm.
teacher who was like, "All right, oh, I'm over it. Like, I will suspend you if you do this one more time."
Just because of the X. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just because of the
That's
X.
wild. That's wild.
I did speech and debate, and for
Uh-huh.
3 years I lost every single tournament because I did every poetry piece that I did for 3 years about police brutality,
Oh
knowing
man.
that
There
I
you
would
go.
lose. So
Right.
I trained and I practiced for 3 years, knowing that I would lose every single tournament for 3 years because I
Right.
refused to do pieces on anything other than police brutality. So that was like the person that I was going in. So I was like, all right, this isn't going to phase me. But I think at some point I kind of realized this is wearing me down. And at some point, like I can't survive with my walls up, with my defenses up 24/7 like this, because like I'm like, dang, I'm only like 19 and I'm exhausted. Right? Like I can't do this forever.
Yeah, I understand.
So I transferred to Hampton, and I mean, it was the biggest like just confidence boost, like recharging, retooling, refueling place. Like
HBCU.
I say all the time. Yeah, I say all the time, I would not have been the person I needed to be to go to Yale if it wasn't for Hampton. Like Hampton made me the person who could go into an Ivy League space and know who I was and be confident in my knowledge and be confident in what I know and just who I was as a person in a way that I would have never gotten in Lynchburg. I would have came run down and already exhausted and not ready to do the work that I needed to do at Yale.
Now, what made New Haven home besides Yale?
I think it's a very sad answer now, because initially it was the church that I was working at. I was working with some amazing kids, and I mean, those kids changed my life. Like before that, I was never a person who even liked kids. Like I wasn't like a kids person. I didn't babysit. Like I didn't like kids.
I get it. I get it. I totally get it.
But I started working with these kids. I started working with these kids, and I was like, man, like I don't typically like kids, but I like y'all. So after graduation, I moved to DC for a year, and I was like, I miss these kids bad. And I kept coming back to New Haven, so I was coming back every 3 months. Also, my hair was relaxed, so I wasn't trying to get a new stylist. So I was mostly coming back for my stylist, but also to like continue working with these kids. And then after I chaperoned their winter retreat, so I took a train from DC to New Haven to meet up with the kids, to get in a van to drive 4 hours to Pennsylvania for a weekend retreat, to drive back to New Haven, and then to take the train back to DC for work on that Tuesday. And I was like, that's crazy. And I got back to DC and I was like, man, I miss them kids. And I was like, what is going on with me? I was like, I have never liked kids like this, but I mean, just the way that they were inquisitive, that they just wanted to learn. They wanted to ask questions about faith. And they just wanted somebody who like they knew was going to be in their corner. And so was just like going to somebody who wasn't going to judge them. And was just going to listen to them. And for me, like that made New Haven home for me. Of course, like I would be remiss without, my best friend would kill me if I didn't say, my best friend also lived in New Haven and was still here. Like she's amazing, love her. But I think definitely it was like the kids and the families that really like made New Haven feel different to me.
Awesome.
No, and as a parent for some of those kids, I have to say, watching, and I kind of got to watch it in a different way than anybody else, because I always kind of hung out in the background of that church, and got as involved as they would let me until they'd start to annoy me, and then I'd back off. And no, it's true, and they all know that. Every single one of them, they're like, yeah. Probably. And then they get it. Like they afforded me a little bit more than they would afford normal people, because I don't know why. But yeah, I remember, I think one of the first years that you're out there, I think just for the internship even. And you and I were just talking just to talk. And you were telling me how every once in a while you would have to go and hide out in stairwells at Yale. Because it was just socially too much. And then to see you, take on these bigger atmospheres of going out with the children and, taking them to another state and taking them to Jordan's, high flying thing for no apparent reason, having to people that much, I remember when you sat down as the massive introvert, then I'd be like, oh, come to a show. And you're like, I don't people. I'm not going to do that. But you're also very honest about it too, because you just look at me like, yeah, I'm probably never going to do that. So just so you know, you know, and now you're someone that fully engages and fully is at the point of really starting your own type of community. One of the things that I wanted to get to as after you were talking about, you know, going from Lynchburg to Hampton, it also seems like that's where you're at again. You know, you were very beaten down by the corporate structure of things. You're very beaten down by how things are supposed to be in a dollars and cents type of way. And yes, we understand. We don't pour salt in anyone else's hustle. You know, you got to pay the light bill. You got to make sure the people in which you employ, you know, get their money. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that have money are the people that are despicable. Sorry, I'm going to say it. I said it, and if anyone has any sort of hate mail about it, feel free to send it to Prestige because I don't care. But
I care about this
now.
Oh, go ahead.
But now you're developing this community, and it is super important. And that is one thing that no matter what from that church structure, I did understand that your community is super important. But who you include in your community is 100% up to you. And that's one of the things that I think is so loving and incredible. And I love how you are now formulating this community. And you've really even taken this community online as per, you do a lot of content creation for TikTok and you work in those type of aspects. What is it like now taking just being yourself and branding just an extension of you or your personality for public consumption?
Gotcha. Prestige, was there something you wanted to add in there before I?
Oh no, that was a great question. That was a chef's kiss. So I'm just gonna let you answer that. So I'm gonna step back and you know, just pay attention right now.
So it's interesting because I was speaking of my best friend, we were hanging out on Thursday, and I was just telling her, I was like, I don't know what to call it. I was like, I feel like I'm a freelance pastor, a community pastor, the people's pastor, right? Where you know, I'm no longer associated with I'm no longer tied to any institution, but the work of like being a person who cares for people and walks with people through the ups and downs of life is a thing that that I think is just like part of who I am. And I think, easy to your point about like being like out on people, I think the more that I have like come into this I have found what is my liberation, and I have discovered what that is, and to like lean more into like actually who I'm called to be and like what I've been built for. I realize I have a little bit more bandwidth and I can do things if I paint the picture to myself in a certain way, right? I'm like, oh, it's not peopling, right? I'm connecting with people and I'm building networks, and that feels different to me than, you know, just being with people for people's sake, right? Because I think at my core, regardless of job title, I in every area I'm in, whether I like it or not, right? Like whether I try to or not, I'm a person who is going to be a pastor. I'm a person who's going to want to care for people and walk with people through difficult things, right? Even now with the former church I was at, there are people who are there and they're going through tough times. And I'm like, so I don't really care about like the organizational things, but how are you dealing with those things, right? And I'm like, I don't know how to be in contact with people and around people without caring in that way. So that then translates to the other communities I'm building. That then translates to, you know, content creation and TikTok, where even as I teach theology on TikTok, there's a lot of people who just like spew information. But I think my thing is, my goal is always that it has an end with people gaining knowledge that will serve the furthering of their liberation, right? Collecting knowledge and knowing facts and all of that will not serve you if it doesn't kind of go back to contributing to a level of freedom, a level of like abundance and liberation. And which is, I think, fitting that my kind of area of specialty or my area of study is liberation theology, because I'm like, theology does no good if it's not further liberating us in our struggles. So, so that, I think, even though those things can in some ways feel different and disparate, I think the underlying kind of tie, the core of it all is helping people get free and find out what freedom is, from oppression, from religious trauma, from religious oppression and white supremacy and all of those things.
So now the $50 million question, and I'm just going to say this, and after I say it, we are going to make this happen. So you no longer
make it happen on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Raised, Elm City Made, Easy Blues. Continue.
So you and I have talked about branding and independent branding and all that kind of stuff, and we've always kind of like just sat at that moment. Now, in the way that you've gone with growing your TikTok audience and all those different things, so the next evolution for you is a podcast. You know that, right?
I do, and there's been thoughts there, and I've thought about it.
But here's the thing: you have to just treat it like it's a service. Every Sunday or every Tuesday or whatever, you have a sermon, and you talk about the things in that sermon. You go for that hour, and you put it through out there, and then for the rest of the week you clip it so that you have extra content that's moving forward and shaking an aspect. Then you can have guest people on there to talk about different things. That's your church is just broader.
Yeah.
Your affiliation is to the world. Your affiliation is to a corporate structure. So go be the punk rock preacher and handle it that way. A full do it yourself. You can have a GoFundMe, not even a GoFundMe. You can have a Patron, a Patreon, type of thing right there. I know a whole bunch of graphic design people. We can get you logos and all that kind of different stuff, so that it is at least sustainable. So now you have not only this thing to put the word out there, but you have something that might be able to sustain itself, so you can continue to put the word out there and still go out there and do everything else that you're doing, engaging, being one of the top pickleball players in all of pickleball. And how did the pickleball journey happen? Now let's get into the pickleball journey.
Man, that's hilarious. The pickleball thing happened because there was a tournament in New Haven back in the spring, and a friend of mine was playing in the tournament, and I went, and I was like, oh, I could do this. I was like, I saw it, I was like, oh, I could do this, and then kind of played and got hooked, and was like, oh, this is a thing that honestly I'm down to like work at and become good at. And again, like now I find it that I'm like, oh, I want to go where the people are, where I can connect with people and build relationships. So now I'm like building relationships with folks who are in my neighborhood and around the city, playing pickleball. Literally, I have already hit up the group chat for this afternoon. I was like, 6:37. All right, I'm gonna be out there. Right. And like it's kind of become this very cool addiction for me, and especially during this time where I have not so recently left the church and have been like in between jobs. I'm like, oh, I have some free time and like something to feel like I'm working towards. So I'm hoping to enter into my first tournament in September here in New Haven, and I'm working with the coach and everything. So I'm trying to be a pickleball evangelist out here. I think it's great for everybody. It's a great way to meet your neighbors and get some exercise in. My quads are looking better than they ever have before. So I highly recommend it for everybody.
Quads on fleek, as the kids say these days. But I think that's awesome, and I love again how you just naturally go into this aspect. The pickleball evangelist. I mean, come on. I see shirts, I see things like these are the things that can happen. but we don't have to look at it in that huge scale. You know, this is why I love this show so much, because we talk about the everyday scale. We talk about, you know, finding out what you want to do with the rest of your life and having fun with it, but just being able to survive, you know, to be able to not just survive, but thrive just a little bit. Like, I don't need, you know, 17 car garage. I just need a roof over my head and I need food in my stomach. And that's the purest form of happiness. As you are continuing to grow and build and go on to that next evolution, where do you think your next stop is going to be?
My next stop in terms of what?
Your future.
In terms of who you're going to be. Yeah,
future.
like who are you going to be?
What other future goals you got? Like what's upcoming? What can we expect from you?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think the biggest thing is so I took a little bit of a break from content creation because after I'll just say it, after losing my job and being fired as a pastor, that level of discouragement, like I was like, I have nothing to say to people. Like, it took me a long time to kind of convince myself again that I wasn't a bad pastor, that I wasn't you know, not called to this, that I actually do have things to say. So that took quite a while. Because I think people when people don't like the way you do the things that you do, they, you know, they give you the boot. And just because, you know, a group of people decided that they didn't like the way I was pastoring doesn't mean that I am not a good pastor. It doesn't mean that I'm bad. I just wasn't a fit for them. And now looking back on it, I'm glad I'm not a good fit for them, because that's not the type of organization that I want to be a fit in, right? I don't want to fit in there. So I am now working my way back towards content creation. And I think, a podcast definitely makes a lot of sense. I definitely want to do some more writing, even if it's, you know, articles and things like that, and kind of getting that content creation muscle back, because it's definitely harder when you don't have the boundaries of like, oh, I'm preaching this week, or I need to write a sermon for this, I need to write a lesson for this. So when it's all self-motivated, it's definitely harder when you're also trying to like build your confidence back as well. So definitely coming back to TikTok, definitely some writing in the future, and maybe this podcast. Every time I talk to Easy, I'm always more encouraged than I was the last time. So
maybe. I have your number. I have a microphone. Like we can have this up and running. We'll talk off air, not on air. We don't have anything written down. There's no copyrights. But what's super, super interesting, and the one thing that I hope when everyone goes back and listens to this over and over and over again, they pull this incredible piece of nugget out of your story, which is you had issues with the peopling because you were being forced to people on someone else's thing. You had problems when you were trying to be that person for other people instead of being yourself. And once you discover who you are, you can accomplish anything. And that, you know, is the most incredible lesson of all. And really the most Christ-like lesson, because once you discover who you are, once Christ discovered who they were, you know, it was able to go about and do this next mission and do this thing out of love, you know, and whether it's Ricky Bobby's favorite Jesus and you're playing the baby Jesus, or my favorite Jesus and it's table flipping Jesus, or, you know, Preston's favorite Jesus, the one that always makes sure the Steelers win for him. That, you know, all of those Jesuses are just as important.
That Jesus is long and gone, so not even the devil can help out the Steelers. So we got. But Moriah,
I was just trying to include you, bro.
No, I appreciate that, and I already felt included with this conversation. But for someone who wants to feel included, for someone who wants to feel connected, even this question is for parents as well too, and just for anybody in general. What are some easier ways just to talk to somebody about Christ and Jesus? Because religion can be such a tough topic to talk about with someone who just feels lost or probably doesn't believe at all. What are some ways you can encourage someone to open up a conversation about God? Because it can be difficult for some people.
Yeah, I think the best ways to open up lines of communication is to ask questions and to genuinely listen to the answers, right? And continue to allow folks to ask questions. The answers to those questions don't matter as much as you think they do, right? When folks are like, oh, so, you know, why is this, or do you believe that this thing in the Bible actually happened, and all of that? The actual answers to that don't matter nearly as much as we think they do. It more so matters that you are allowing folks to ask their questions and honestly listening, and honestly just engaging and being present, right? One thing that I have learned, if nothing else, from working with young people is giving them a space to ask their questions will reveal so many things about what's actually on their hearts, so many things about the things that they're actually concerned about and care about. And having those answers, you know, as an adult, you want to have all of the answers and be like, oh, I can answer all your questions. They don't really care about the answers. They just want to know that somebody cares enough to listen. And that is showing more of the love of Jesus than evangelism, than, you know, preaching the gospel and all of that. It's being present with folks and allowing people to have genuine, honest conversations and feel like you're actually listening and being present with them.
Mentally noted. Thank you so much, Easy Blues.
No, I think that's awesome, and I think that was amazing. You know, that genuineness is so super important, and that's one of the things that we love about you. And we're going to continue to celebrate with you and through evolution upon evolution upon evolution. You know, we are at this point in time, though, they are pulling the Apollo curtain on us. One thing that I just want, you know, because your ministry is more youth-based as per right now, and I do say as per right now because, you know, caveats and yada yada. That young kid that is being told, even by the corporate Christianity, that they don't have a place. Can you just tell them for us right now that they are seen and they are loved? And what is that advice that you would tell them right now?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I would tell them that that no church has the place to tell you who you are. Nobody can, no person can deny the fact that you are loved by God, right? Scripture says, like, no demon in hell, no principality, nor life, nor death, like, can ever separate us from the love of God. So no thing in your life, no orientation, no identity, nothing you could ever do, have done, will ever separate you. Like, it is impossible. And as you take steps to connect to God, God also takes steps to connect with you, right? And don't let other people put in barriers that God never intended to be there, because you are loved exactly as you are right now, flaws and all, awkwardness and all, just as you are. You are undeniably loved.
Awesome. And please give out that social media so anybody can contact you and wish to connect with you.
You can find me on all social media at Revriah, Revriah.
Awesome. Moriah, thank you so much for being part of Behind the Brand. We do appreciate you, myself and Easy Blues.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No doubt. On WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Wondering what to write about, trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know.
I don't know.